1, live.
Alrighty.
All right.
How's everybody doing today?
I'm doing quite well.
Yeah, as am I. Doing good. Staying busy.
Staying busy. Yeah, tell me about it. We're hopefully days away from launching my company's next version of our software, which has been all-consuming.
Yeah, I think you've been days away for what, weeks now, right?
Yes, actually, that would be accurate to say. Software is hard. Software companies are harder. All right, so we've got a nice detailed agenda, which we will probably not get all the way through.
But we can try.
We can definitely try.
I changed a couple of things because I would propose the first thing we talk about would be Jesse's resignation, because I think we need to establish protocol about what happens when a board member resigns.
Yeah.
So, what are your all thoughts on that?
Well, once we have the bylaws up and running, it's all covered in the bylaws. There's a whole process and procedure. There's a minimum required for a quorum. I'm trying to remember how exactly it was written. I think so long as we have at least 5, no replacement was required, though the
4 actually.
Could,
I think
4?
You might be right. It might be 5. I'll have to check.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me. I can step away and pull it up on my computer, but
that is it. If we have, as long as we have 5, no replacements required. 5 being the minimum.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So, the bylaws haven't been officially adopted yet, but probably honoring them even at this stage makes some sense. So,
I would agree.
Yeah, I think a 5th would be helpful. Just tiebreakers and all that.
Yeah, and I have some thoughts on that. I think this could be a unique opportunity for us to do like we did with Sean King here and recruit someone else from outside the Nashville area. If we're really if we're trying to represent Tennessee, I think this might be a good opportunity to do that. Because I know we have people in the Nashville area who'd be more than willing to step up and fill that role. I've already had people mention it. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
For me personally, I definitely agree with that. I think it would be a mistake to kind of pretend to be a Tennessee organization and really just represent the local Nashville ideas. So I think that would be fantastic. I don't know the practical steps of how to do that or how that may slow down the progress that we're making. I think Sean's rally cry email was fun along those lines of like, hey, we want to get some stuff done and we want to move quickly. So, but yeah, I personally think that's a great idea.
One thing to consider, we could even incorporate this into the draft of the bylaws. If you think about how Tennessee governance is set up, the Tennessee Supreme Court, for example, requires that there, I believe, be at least 1 justice from each of the 3 grand divisions, Middle East and West Tennessee. So I don't know if we would want to have that as formally part of the bylaw requirement or just maybe informally honor that, but I think it'd be a good idea.
I would say that informally honoring it might be the smarter decision. It may be a goal that we try to achieve, but to put it in the bylaws as a requirement would potentially weaken our strengths. If let's say for instance that there's nobody in Memphis and people in Memphis don't want to, there isn't a lot of potential candidates, so we end up being forced into accepting somebody who isn't really a good fit for the organization simply because we have a role to fill. Does that make sense?
Right.
Yeah, I think that I agree. I think that we should definitely aim for that, but I don't personally, at least at this point, see a need for including that in the bylaws, something that we're bound to. But I do speak. Memphis is the example that Sean gave, but I actually happen to know of at least one individual in Memphis who might be interested, who's been involved with Bitcoin in that area for some time. So I could reach out to him and see if he'd be interested in filling that role. I think, but at this point, because we haven't gotten to the point where we have clarified who are voting members of the alliance, I'm not sure what the process is. Is it just we put someone on there, or do we get another meeting of everybody who has an opinion and say, approve this guy? We don't because we haven't formalized our membership levels yet as far as who has voting privileges, it becomes a little tricky, I think, at this point. Now, because it's an interim board position, I think that, you know, I don't think it'll be a huge issue, but I'm just not sure what the best way is to actually make that selection.
I guess I do have, now that I'm second guessing myself a little, I do have a little bit of anxiety about trying to introduce a new person from scratch at this point. I think just getting them up to speed on where we are already, getting ourselves up to speed has been a process, and just getting them up to speed again would probably set us behind another couple weeks at least, just getting them oriented. One thought would be to, in the current draft of the bylaws, it does have, I think, the initial board members, and had 5 of us listed. My one thought would be to strike that and make it the 4 initial board members that remain, allow us to proceed, and then when we formally adopt the bylaws, bring on the new member. That would allow us at least to get the bylaws adopted and to get some things done before we had to get a new member completely oriented. But I could go either way, whatever you guys think.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I'll second that.
I would kind of step back a little bit and say, what if we were to bring on somebody that we knew had a lot to offer and could help us in great ways that we don't have to catch up to speed because they're already up to speed on everything that we're doing anyway. All we do is just put them in that position because we know that they're going to do good for us.
And are you referring to someone you have in mind in the Nashville area?
I am actually. Specifically, I'm talking about Jake Robinson.
Okay. Yeah, he's definitely someone who's been involved and would be interested in that role. And he'll be a benefit to the organization either way because he's willing to volunteer through action teams and such.
He is, and he's already committed to being on board in everything that we do. I only suggested that as a board member, he might have a bit more to offer us as an organization, and that might sound, self-serving or greedy a little bit, but it kind of is. I think that he's very beneficial to our organization. He brings a lot to the table. He has a lot of tools, a lot of skill set. He offers a level of maturity and experience that our board could definitely benefit from.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, he's definitely a candidate, but I think the issue we're going to run into very quickly here is that there are a number of good candidates.
Yeah, I was going to comment on that, and I was saying, like, should we fall back on the vote that I was already taken and basically bring in the 6th person? Because we have those votes, and we have that
tally right here.
Yeah, and so that is one option that would be kind of a quick way up and running. Obviously, the voting is going to be impacted by if they were only thinking of 5, and the vote may turn out different. But that is one thing that we could do and be justified, I think, as far as the community is concerned. But I'm open to planning another meeting as well if we need to. I mean, again, we're all interim as it is. So yeah. I don't think there's going to be a huge I wouldn't imagine a huge pushback anyway over the next 4 months or whatever we have left for the year.
Right.
I just do think that as long as we can move forward with what we want to accomplish, I personally would second the let's go with the 4 we have now. Let's get this going and say, hey guys, here's an issue we have. The first thing I want to do is communicate what's going on. So
yes.
Other than anyone watching this, no one is aware of Jesse's resignation yet, and I want to take his statement, send that to the think tank email group as a first thing, and just say, hey, if you have any further questions, feel free to contact Jesse. Just like put in our commentary, there's absolutely no bad blood at all. We're excited to continue to work with him locally, and this was his decision, and this is the reason he gave, and then move on. So that's kind of my thought. Is just communicate it, and then put it out there to say, hey, we are looking for a 5th. These are our options. Just put that in the think tank email, and then have that something we're working on as we move forward.
Yeah, and just quick note on what you mentioned about the previous vote. I just looked because I have the tally here from when we did vote before. It's actually a tie for the 6th spot. It's the tie between Rayanne and Jake. So, cool. Yeah. But I think what you're right. The first thing we need to do is because we're going in a full transparency direction, we really need to make it clear that this has happened, in a graceful way. So I think a think tank announcement is a good idea. Is this something that you as each feel is appropriate that we post a little blurb on on the blog on our new website, or post on social media, or just the think tank group?
I'm fine with just the think tank at this point, just because I don't think that there's enough visibility That's my perspective, because we have our monthly meetings here in Nashville, and we could talk to people face to face. Whereas the website is more people that don't know about what's going on here in Nashville. They might be like, "Wait, what?" So that's just my vote. I don't know that we've been around long enough for that type of thing to matter. If it was like maybe a week or two more, I'd probably feel differently. But that's just my thought.
Sean and John.
I agree with Luke. I think that there's it's not necessary to make a more publicity out of it than it's necessary.
Okay. John King, what do you think?
I agree. I have no objection.
Okay, then I think we're all on the same page. So we'll announce. And Luke, do you want to handle that email announcement to the think tank group? Okay. And then we won't. Beyond that, we won't publicize it any more than necessary. If anybody asks, we can be completely transparent about it. But there's no reason to make a mountain out of a molehill.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. Cool. So I think we can move. And then also to make sure we're on the same page about the second part. As it is right now, is the agreement that we'll continue as the four of us until the bylaws are formalized and adopted, and at that point we'll recruit a fifth?
I believe that's what we talked about.
Does that sound good to the rest of you as well? I mean, because I think that does, we'll probably adopt those bylaws very soon, but that gives us a little bit of time to identify who would that fifth be, what are our options, and then how would we go about doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and then once those bylaws are adopted, there'll be a formal procedure for electing the fifth, and I think it'll just be more smooth that way.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't have any objections to any of that.
Okay, great. Good. Okay, so I think we can move on beyond that. Okay, Luke, you want to talk a little bit about visions and values?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you guys had a chance to watch that video, but in summary, it's a lot of the same stuff that you mentioned, Sean, that you've been talking about already. Just the importance of tipping point. One of the ideas he talks about in that, I had it listed here, but I think I got rid of it, but it's the diffusion of the law of innovation, and the concept that throughout history, when we look at new innovations, that 15 to 18% is the tipping point for culture. And there was a recent report that said you can get there even with 10%, but his idea was like, you could trip over 10% and really not make a difference. But once you get 15 to 18% of people on board, that's when you can actually change everything. And use a different example like the Wright brothers in flying. And his argument is rooted in biology. The really important way to get that to that tipping point is to focus on the why. Why are you doing what you're doing? People are more interested in that than they're interested in what you're doing. And he gives a lot of great examples from TiVo to Apple to this, that, and the other. And I think it's an interesting discussion. It relates a little bit to what we said last week as far as us, how political do we want to be? How much do we want to get into the libertarian thought that is kind of the roots of Bitcoin in many ways? And I think it's an important discussion because right now, if we're honest, the Bitcoin community is really just the super early adopters, the hackers and the people that will just try anything that's new because it's interesting to them. And I think there is a significant challenge to get beyond that. And I think the merchants that are adopting it, even them, are kind of early adopters. And so if we can think about how does that discussion relate to, I mean, the title of the TED Talk from Simon Sinek is How Great Leaders Inspire Action. As the board team, I think that's going to be one of our goals, is we exist to inspire action, to get people to promote and support and increase the usage of Bitcoin. So with that said, I don't have any definitive, like, hey, here's exactly how we're going to do that with our vision and values, but I think our kind of mission statement to promote the adoption and use of blockchain technologies for a free and equitable society, that ties into that a little bit as far as why do we exist? Why are we going to have action teams that are doing things? Why are we going to have dues? Why are we going to have member benefits? Why are all these things going to exist? I think it's going to be really important for us to clarify that, and it's not easy. I mean, I'm still trying to do it with my own company. We've been around for 7 years. It's a difficult thing to do right, but the companies that have done it right, it's really fantastic. If they can summarize everything in a short little sentence that says, hey, this is why we exist. This is why you want to do business with us or interact with us. That would be my thought, and I think that from that point, when you have really clear vision and values, and you really understand why are you even bothering to do this, things like mission statements, goals, other things that come down the road, project planning and all that, just become super clear. Because when there's a question, they're like, hey, are we going to do this or not do this? We have an opportunity, or we have a conflict, or we have everything. You can always go right back to those values and say, well, yeah, we could do that or we couldn't do that, or maybe even it's profitable to do that potentially, but it interacts with our values in a way that may not be good. So I'll just give an example. I posted it in our Facebook group about a company that, the Bitcoin car stuff, they're doing some advertising. And there's a company out there that I have a little bit of concerns over. And there's been some criticism of the Bitcoin Foundation for not being more actively engaging the community about the concerns with Mt. Gox. So that is an example. If there's a company out there that we feel we should potentially warn people about, hey, there may be some potential issues here, that's an example. That lines up potentially with our vision and values. We don't want to hurt the adoption of Bitcoin. So that may be an important role that we serve as a Bitcoin Alliance. I don't know. That's just one example of how the vision and values can actually direct our activities and what we feel is a priority. So that's just to get this discussion started. What do you guys think we should go from there as far as vision and values? Should we work on getting a sentence or paragraph together for that, or what are your thoughts?
My thought is why don't we start with just some key words even that we can all, I think, agree on, that we all feel represent what this organization is supposed to be about. And then with those keywords, maybe one of us, and I'd be happy to take a stab at it, can take a stab at writing a paragraph or two that would kind of incorporate those words into a vision statement or mission statement or whatever you want to call it. One word that comes to mind based on prior conversations that I think we could probably all agree on is choice. I mean, one of the things that I think all appeals to us about Bitcoin is that it does enable free choice in ways that fiat currencies and the whole fiat currency system, banks, etc., don't. And so, choice I think would be a big one. I don't know how we would. Another one that comes to mind for me, it would be, I don't know how we want to say it, but peer-to-peer is what I'm getting at. The fact of people being able to communicate, to transact directly with one another, without the necessity of third-party, so-called trusted third-party intermediaries.
Yeah.
Be that currency transactions or any other types of transactions or communications. What are your all's thoughts on those two things?
Yeah, I think that'd be great. My recommendation was maybe we could do that via email, and just start bouncing some ideas back and forth in email, because that could quickly turn into a long discussion. But I think that's fantastic. I think focusing on words will really help us.
Yeah. No, I have a question here just to clarify, and I guess I see a couple options, so I'll present those. Is that one option is that we go ahead and we formalize or adopt a mission statement, something like what we already have drafted now, to promote the adoption and use of blockchain technologies for a free and equitable society. And then we have sort of our vision narrative, which explains this in a little bit more detail, which is a few sentences, but it's less of a tagline. That's one way I see one option. And I guess the other would be to scratch this mission statement as it is and try to recraft one from the ground up using those keywords or something like that.
I like the first approach myself.
Yeah, I personally like the first approach. We talked last week about that what we have now, and I think we all agree that is why we're here. We want to promote blockchain technologies. The why for it is what I'd love to flesh out a little bit. And if we end up doing that and decide that first statement is not powerful enough, it doesn't really explain the why. If we're starting with the what, the blockchain technology is the what, and that's not inspiring, then yeah, we may need to revisit that. Because I do think that starting with the why, but it's like we talked about last week, it's a complicated discussion to say like, hey, the entire monetary system that you've grown up with is basically angled towards your slavery. Like that's a larger discussion to have to people to get them on board with why this is important. So. Yeah, okay. That's what I think would be best as well, is if we do go ahead and formalize like a mission statement, which we're all more or less agreement at this point on at least the general message of that, and then we have a vision narrative. I mean, this is all something that we can this is all stuff we can publicly share on our about page, but it's also something we use as our compass when, Luke, you gave the example of like when we're looking at something going, okay, how does this tie back into our vision? How does this tie back into our about? I think that'd be the best strategy. And even that, it doesn't necessarily have to be public. Like the company I worked for like 6 years, they had a very strong mission statement that was it was a very ideological company, a faith-based company, and it was like every decision they made literally went through that. You'd be in meetings and every employee had to recite it and understand it, and they would make decisions like, hey, this is a profitable thing, but it doesn't fit our mission statement, we're not going to do it. But it wasn't something they ever put on their website. It was more internal.
Okay.
So
yeah,
it doesn't necessarily have to be worded in a way that's like going to be a marketing piece. It can literally be something very internal to us to say, hey, this is how we make our decisions. But the starting with why part, based on that Simon Sinek video, I think is important from a marketing standpoint to encourage excitement and action.
Yeah, and we have to. Our job is really not our job, but our job of the organization, everyone that's being a part of it, is to just continuously improve our way of articulating that why and getting people engaged with that why.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the only feedback I would have for you, John, is to me, I think the vision statement, the why is maybe a better way of saying it. I think the why is not underneath the current mission statement. I think the why is the genesis for the current mission statement. So the why is almost on top, and the current mission statement, which is the public face of the why,
right,
is underneath the vision.
That's a good visualization. Thank you. That makes sense.
Very cool.
Okay, so so is that something we'll work on in an email thread or in a Google document or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, unless you guys want to spend a little more time on it right now.
I think email's good, or a Google Hangout.
The Google Docs, Google Share Docs. I think that the Google Share Doc, because it's collaborative, would probably be the best format for that.
True.
Yeah, because we can all comment or edit or even put. Then now you can even add suggested edits in Google Docs, which makes it really easy to use. Okay, so I'll make a note of that. And by the way, I'm using our minutes also as our agenda also as our minutes, and just adding in notes in each section as we go.
Cool.
Okay.
So it sounds like we've kind of just formalized that as well. So I like that.
Now, yeah, the mission statement.
Mm-hmm.
But when we were talking about this a minute ago, I like so those of you that don't have it up right now, the way it's written right now, this proposed mission statement is, quote, to promote, and then it says the adoption/use of blockchain technologies for a free and equitable society. When Luke and I each both said it a minute ago, we both just said and, the adoption and use of, and I thought that sounded good. Any feedback on that? Should we go ahead and vote on, or are there any other suggestions to how we should modify that? Our current mission statement being to promote the adoption and use of blockchain technologies for a free and equitable society?
I think the adoption and use is important because there is a distinction between adopting something and using it. Just for instance, people adopt Bitcoin as an investment, but they're not using it. They're not conducting any transactions off of it. So, some people may adopt it, and then others may use it. One leads to the other, but one doesn't necessarily mean the other. So I think that adoption and use is definitely a distinction that should be clarified.
I agree. I think if we're going to have one, we need the other. A question I would ask is, do we need either? I mean, could we just say cut the adoption and use and just say to promote blockchain technology for a free and equitable society?
Great point.
Even broader than adoption and use.
That's a good question.
Yeah, actually, that sounds really nice, to promote blockchain technologies for a free and equitable society, because it's very possible there's going to be ideas we've never even thought of that blockchain technology is going to be used in the future. It's just like the early internet, and nobody could imagine Skype or what we're doing right now. Like, nobody could imagine that. The early internet, there was no image tags. Like, the HTML consortium was like, don't you dare put in image tags. This is supposed to be text. And Mozilla and Netscape were like, nope, we're doing image tags. And they're like, so there's things that we could think of it this way, but not even have a clue. So yeah, I would actually vote to say to promote blockchain technologies for free and equitable society. I think that's fantastic. And that implies some of the words we've already mentioned as far as choice, peer-to-peer, freedom is another one that I would think of, that kind of stuff. So yeah.
I agree, because also after thinking about that, when you made that point, Sean, about taking adoption and use of, that one of the other things that we've already talked about doing is development of blockchain technologies. That doesn't fall under adoption or use. So I think that I agree. I think it'd be better to shorten that, just to promote blockchain technologies for a free and equitable society.
Cool.
Sean Roy, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm good with that. Sounds great.
Okay, so are we all in agreement?
Yep.
Yeah, for website purposes and stuff, I don't know that we would want to begin it with the word "to." I mean, maybe we just say, Tennessee Bitcoin Alliance promoting blockchain technologies.
Yeah, I like that.
Equitable society. So I think we could phrase it either way, depending on the context. But
okay, yeah.
Or even making it active, you could say the Tennessee Bitcoin Alliance promotes blockchain technologies for a free and equitable society. Yeah.
Do we have to formalize the tense of promote?
I don't think so personally, but
no, I just didn't want us to be too formalistic and get stuck with thinking we had to begin with the word "to."
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought it up. That's a really good point.
How about, well, I'll put "to promote" in brackets, and then the quote of our approved mission statement starts at blockchain.
All right, so, John wants it official. Rock on, John.
Okay, so then there we go.
All
right, cool. Okay, so we can move on from that. Awesome. Yeah. One of the things that I added on here, which ties back into the visions and values and that mission statement, is I think we need to talk about just for a minute about some of our broad goals for between now and the end of the year as an interim board, because then we need to start breaking those down based on what we're doing each week or each month, because we don't have a whole lot of time. I think we could make an endless list of lots and lots of small goals that we want to get done, but as far as on broad goals, like I listed, just you file as 501c3, formalize membership levels, recruit membership, elect board members. Is there anything else that you each think that we should have on our radar as some of our broader goals that we're looking at right now as an organization between now and the end of the year?
I think the only thing I'm just thinking back to some of Jesse's comments, and I think Jesse's blood sugar was a little low or something. I think he would have been a huge resource to this group, and so I'm disappointed that he felt like he couldn't play the role that he wanted to. But he did have a lot of very, I think, insightful and important comments, and I think one of those is crafting the public face of the alliance and getting the website perfected, vetted. So I think one of the goals that we should have, because I think getting that website up and running needs to be done contemporaneously with some of the other things you just mentioned, John. Getting it perfected, I guess, is a better word. I don't know that it can wait or should wait till after the first of the year. So I don't know how we would phrase it, but to me, having some process or procedure by which those sort of things get vetted and approved and implemented and reviewed and that sort of stuff. Also, I think coming to agreement among us, and it sounds like we mostly did in the some of the exchanges we had through the Google Hangout, but as to what the board's role would be on a go-forward basis. I mean, typically a board is a governing body that sets policy and that reviews the actions that are implemented by officers of the organization and slaps hands when necessary and provides kudos when appropriate and requires tweaks or changes as needed. But I certainly don't think that we ought to be in a position where every single thing that gets done in the name of the organization has to be pre-approved by this board. I think that's just going to make us a bureaucratic nightmare. So just thinking through that, talking through that, and maybe developing just some informal written guidelines about the role of the board and how we're going to empower action teams and that sort of stuff might be appropriate.
Yeah, I was wondering how much of that is covered in the bylaws and how much of it is just completely open to us to define. I haven't looked through the bylaws in great detail myself yet, and I will definitely do that before our next meeting. But I think a lot of this just is going to come down to expectations. What expectations do we have of ourselves and of the organization? And right now, personally, my expectations are very low because we're just starting out. So when I see anything up there, I'm like, wow, awesome! Like that's progress. And I don't expect it to be perfect. Now, the next point is, if we're promoting ourselves, like, John, we discussed, you were talking about how you mentioned on an interview with Bitcoins and Gravy as an example, then that would be a public PR type thing that might impact all of us in a greater way. And those are the kind of things, like if the Tennessean calls us up and says, hey, guys, I want you to, talk about this, that might be, those might be the examples of something. I've got, I'm going to be on a panel discussion coming up at a conference in California later in the year, and it's this kind of thing, like, I want to represent Bitcoin Alliance there. So there's things like that. I think there are just clarifying what our expectations of the types of events, even now as we're still early on, just say, hey, these are the kind of things that we should at least fire off an email. Just say, hey, FYI, this is going on. And what are the type of events that we're like, hey, this is like a really big deal. We probably shouldn't go do that until we at least get some feedback. So yeah, I think progress is great, but I think it's going to come down to our expectations, because to the extent that we don't do that is the extent our expectations are going to cause frustration within our board membership and also within our community, to be like, hey guys, why are you doing that? That's not up to my own expectations or standards, and that's going to be frustrating. So yeah, I think clarifying what our own expectations are might help with that, to say, hey, we expect the website to have this level of quality. We expect every PR type interaction with media to have this type of vetting. We expect, those kind of things would be good to clarify.
Yeah. So I wrote in the notes under the goals by MVP are establish protocol for TBA publication and product launches, because I think that's one of the things we're talking about right now, is just establishing what exactly do we do, what avenues we need to run that through, and then also establish role of the board, role and responsibilities. I guess I'll add to that, because I think we're going to need to clarify that as we go forward. Because I agree, I think we're all on more or less the same page, but we're also not going to be the only board members, and we're not going to, some of us may not even be on the board once there's an election. So we need to take that into account as well, as clarifying that in writing somewhere, so that the board understands their role, whether or not we're individually a part of it.
Yep. I wonder if it's worth even saying out loud. It's kind of obvious, but even prioritization of these goals, I think, is an important thing. Like I mentioned, I think in an earlier email, formalizing the membership levels for me currently is not a high priority until I know what value we're going to provide. And that's a concern I have, as far as until we know who we are as an organization, until I know, and Sean, I know you've mentioned numerous times that you've got a lot of great ideas about really great value, and this being a profitable company, potentially, profitable organization right now. I just don't know those yet. Like, I'm just thinking about myself as a random community member going, I'm going to pay how much for what? Like when some people aren't even sure if they want to make a monthly meeting, that has free pizza. So, or pay for pizza. So I want to make sure that we I'm part of a lot of different kind of user groups in town, and getting buy-in even to free membership groups is sometimes difficult. So I want to make sure we don't put the cart before the horse a little bit as far as the value we provide. So yeah, so just prioritizing of these, I think, would be good. Because I agree with Sean King as well. Just the public face is kind of that is our entire organization as far as the public is concerned at this point.
Yeah,
whatever they see on that website is who we are.
The only thing I would maybe push back on a little bit on that is I think there are, I don't know how many, but I think there are some meaningful number of people that are just excited enough about this that even without understanding the value proposition of the organization, they're ready to jump in and put up a little bit of money and just support the cause. And cool. I would hate to, maybe I'm wrong, but I would hate to make them wait to do that just because we hadn't totally articulated what our value prop for each level of membership is going to be. So what if we did exactly what you just said, Luke, and we before we formalize those levels of membership, we do articulate our value proposition to each of them better. But what if we create a founders class of membership right off the bat? It's really a honorary thing more than anything. They don't have any more rights or anything necessarily, but anybody who joins prior to X date and puts up X amount of dollars or Bitcoin is considered a founders group member, and that would allow those who are really excited about it, I think, to at least go ahead and jump in, head first.
Yeah, I love that.
I like that.
Yeah, because I think that does two things. It recognizes those who are the early members that want to support this, but two, it doesn't increase expectations. Like my biggest concern with having like membership levels is it does create, and that's kind of the point, an expectation that we are now going to meet, and you're going to feel like that was a great exchange. But by just saying, hey, it's honorary, it's clear that there aren't any new expectations being developed, but it does meet the need that they have to be involved and to be heard and to know, like, hey, I want to represent myself as somebody that supports this, and that's great.
Yeah, and I think as far as paid membership goes, I think that the easiest benefit to formalize is voting rights for a basic like paid member, because I think some of these things we can articulate to some extent what the benefits are to being a member in various different classes or what our visions and values are. But right now we're representing a very small subset of the Bitcoin community, or the community in general in Tennessee. Once we open up the doors and say, okay, anyone who wants to put some money down and join the organization as a basic entry level, like paid member and get voting rights, you have a say in the future of the organization. You have a say in who's leading the organization, and then we can go from there to start honing in and formalizing, starting very broad, but honing in what exactly do those values look like? What is the value added for a member?
Cool.
Because I think that's the issue right now. Is it's difficult to decide, okay, who gets to vote on what besides the four of us? Because there's just us and then everybody else in the world. And people that come to our meetings, great, but like, does that make you a member? I think that's the immediate need for having those membership levels, and further benefits can be outlined over time. But I really like the idea, Sean King, that you mentioned of adding a founders class just as an honorary title. I think that would definitely add some incentive for people to join sooner rather than later and get involved, get us off the ground, and people would love being able to say, oh yeah, I'm a founding member of the Tennessee Bitcoin Alliance.
Cool.
Right. That sounds great. One thing to think about, we don't know that we need to resolve today. I know you got lots of other things on the agenda, but one thing to think about is, as far as paid membership goes, are we going to accept anything other than cryptocurrencies as membership dues? Are we going to put that stake in the ground and accept fiat dollars as dues, or are we going to require members to pay in appropriate crypto? So I would almost vote for the latter. Even though that might not cut our throats, but might limit our opportunities in the short term, I think long term putting that flag in the ground is going to be important. But I'll let you guys think about that.
I think it's a bold position. I've thought a lot about that as well. It's like I would love my business to move in that direction as well. Sean, I know you've done that with your business. I know your clients, you invoice them in Bitcoin, and they have to deal with that. So that's I have mixed feelings about it, because the volatility makes it time. I do like that, again, when we run into something we don't fully understand the answer to, the vision and values helps clarify. And for me, taking that stance would really emphasize our vision of like, this is how we're going to promote and really get the adoption, really get people to use this. That does both, It does also make things less complicated, as far as like the old fiat systems are more difficult as far as banking accounts and things like that, where we have a multi-sig wallet and we're done. We more people need to agree to spend that money, and we're all good. It's an interesting question.
Yeah, we can manage the volatility through, BitPay or Coinbase, that sort of thing. Pros and cons to that, using a hosted wallet. I know we probably wouldn't want to keep big dollars in a hosted wallet, but as an operating account, it would probably be fine. We could probably also get some publicity by partnering with those guys. They would probably put out a press release that, Tennessee Bitcoin Alliance is partnering with BitPay or Coinbase or whoever. So that may be useful as well.
Yeah, and on that note, I have informed some people within BitPay a little bit about what we're doing, and they've already said they want to learn more, because I have a lot of connections there. And yeah, in my Bitcoin 101 HQ, my LLC, I'm getting set up as an integration partner with them to be like their authorized rep in the area as far as setting companies up with BitPay and stuff like that. So like we have like a relationship with them already. Cool. We could definitely do something. I think it'd be good to just accept Bitcoin, because there's always a workaround of some people who don't have Bitcoin and want to get involved. Then if there is demand, the supply will be created. As far as I'm sure, one of the companies in our area that does have Bitcoin would step up and offer a package where if you can buy them, like they'll help you set up your membership you pay them in US dollar and they pay us in Bitcoin. And either way, we just accept Bitcoin, and so we take a principled stance.
Cool.
I think that's what I would lean towards.
Yeah, I think that's a good option. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
In a somewhat off-topic but also related subject, going back to Jesse as a holder of one of the keys to the multi-sig wallet, I would just propose that we issue a key for Sean King to replace that holder.
Yeah, I think I think we need to replace that wallet and just go ahead and create a new 3 out of 4 wallet instead of 2 out of 3. So or 2 out of 4, whatever we want to do. But create a multi-sig wallet where each of the 4 of us holds a key, and then we can, through Copay, we can do that as 2 out of 4 or 3 out of 4, I think, or 4 out of 4. But I don't know if that's.
John, can you add that as an agenda item for you this week?
Yeah, I've got at the bottom. We've got a goals for before next board meeting. I'll add that. Create new BitPay wallet. Now the downside is we learned last time we all have to. Well, it's not only a downside. We have to create the wallet all at the same time. We all have to be online at the same time to create it effectively. So it'd be best if we probably do that at our next board meeting. Like the first thing we do is just create a BitPay wallet or a Copay wallet.
Maybe we won't want to make that board meeting live then.
Well, we can do that right before we go live.
There you go.
Create new Copay. And then because it's the other one's a 2 out of 3, Luke and I can still access the other one and transfer our funds over. Okay. Great. Okay, so thank you for pointing that out, Sean. Roy, that's important. Should we? Okay, I think we covered some of those goals by the end of the year, and I agree we do need to prioritize that. Is that something you guys want to talk about right now, as far as prioritization, or is that something you want to revisit after we've gone over some of these other? I mean, some of the top priority things are already listed on the agenda for today.
I think that it should be noted that of all these things, the number one priority right now is the filing of the 501c3 and their, vis-a-vis the bylaws and stuff like that. I was talking to John earlier. We have like 7 days left on our Google account, so we have to do something. We have to move and get it done PDQ.
Yeah, we got just to explain that, we got a free trial for Google Apps when we set all that up, and as a 501c3, we can get Google App services for free through Google Apps for Nonprofits. But because we haven't actually applied for a 501c3 yet, then I can't apply to the Google Apps for Nonprofits program. So we may actually have to pay for some of that or suspend our service temporarily.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, but
cool.
Yeah. So if we can all agree that our primary objective is to file as a 501c3 and just focus on that, and then move to the other agenda items once that's done at a future meeting. Then that would allow us to move forward. Does that sound good to each of you?
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Yep.
Okay. Good. Okay. This next item, Bitcoins and Gravy. So they're, I think you guys all know, but they're a podcast based out of the Nashville area, and they've been incredibly successful in the Let's Talk Bitcoin network. And so just recently, 2 things happened. One, it doesn't directly affect us, but it's still important to note. It was a 2-minute show of John Barrett and Liz Shaw, and Liz just resigned from the show, so it's just John Barrett now. But that John agreed to add a sponsorship message, free of charge, at least for now, to the Bitcoins and Gravy podcast to say something like, Bitcoins and Gravy is made possible by the Tennessee Bitcoin Alliance, as sort of pre-publicity for us as an organization. So I guess there's 2 parts to that. One is, do we want that publicity right now? Are we ready for it? And the second is, okay, well, what should that message say? And then we can send that to him. What are your thoughts?
I think that we should definitely capitalize on the advertisement. Just FYI, so for the sake of disclosure, I am liaisoning with John Barrett over the development of his show. Website, media, and probably half a dozen other topics. So, so that way there's no conflict of interest. I just want that way for it to be known So I think that we will have a significant amount of collaborative effort put forth from the Bitcoins and Gravy Show inside the TBA, if that makes sense. I think that the show, how it goes on, whether John adds one or more additional hosts or whatever he does with the show, I think that there's a lot that the Bitcoins and Gravy Show will bring to the TBA as individual members, not even as a business, but as individual members, because that's effectively what they are.
Yeah.
I don't see any issues with it. I'm for it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm for it. My only thought would be, if it's premature, but I think if we make it clear on the website that it's like founded such and such a date, and this is, and you're like, wow, that's last week. Again, the expectations aren't going to be super high, and just making clear that we're still in active development. This is really fresh and new, but I see no problem telling the world we're in active development and this is fresh and new. And I think that there's been a couple times that people have heard about what we're doing with Foxcard, even through different podcasts and stuff. So I think that would be great.
Okay, good. I think that, that sounds good to me. I think that it'd be best to capitalize on it, and then obviously I think he'll have the final say over the specific wording of the message. But we can send him a suggestion of what we'd like said. He suggested something like Bitcoins and Gravy is made possible by the Tennessee Bitcoin Alliance, and then follow that up with, hey, who is the Tennessee Bitcoin Alliance? Like the first. So I kind of wrote up a sample idea of what this could look like. The first state-focused nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting, let me change this real quick to our actual mission statement, promoting blockchain technologies for a free and equitable society. I'm not sure that fits in that sentence, but either way, to learn about the Tennessee Bitcoin Alliance, visit TennesseeBitcoin.org.
Yeah, I like it.
Any thoughts or feedback or criticism or edits on it?
I think it's great.
Just I don't know, that's state-focused nonprofit, but if we are, that's cool.
You it? What'd you say?
Oh, I'm sorry if that cut out. I was saying I'd want to make sure the facts behind it. Like I don't know that we definitely are the first state-focused. If we are, then sweet.
As far as I know, we are, and until someone tells me otherwise, I'm going to operate under that assumption.
Yeah, we are.
Cool.
I mean, you look at what is it? BitGive is the first nonprofit charity organization recognized by the IRS, and we haven't even gotten that far yet. So I think it's pretty safe to say that we're the first Tennessee-based, for sure.
Yeah, and we've already had at least 2 states ask us for counsel that want to emulate our model as we move forward. So both Florida and Michigan. So we'll see.
Cool.
But yeah, so Bitcoins and Gravy is made possible by the Tennessee Bitcoin Alliance, the first state-focused nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting blockchain technologies. Now, instead of saying for a free and equitable society there, because I'm not sure it fits in that sentence, should we say like across the state?
No, I think that it's important to specify the for free and equitable society. I think that.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that because you got to remember that the Bitcoins and Gravy Show is not Tennessee-based. I mean, they
Right.
have listeners all over the world that that I think it's important. That's just my feeling.
Yeah, me too.
All right, good. Well, then let's leave it. And then just end with, to learn more about the Tennessee Bitcoin Alliance, visit TennesseeBitcoin.org.
Yeah, I like it.
Good. Okay, cool. I'll send that to John. And yeah, cool. Sounds good. Awesome. So we can move on from that.
Yeah, are we gonna still try to stick to our hour long, which would mean 7 minutes left?
I think we should.
I've got time if we want to go over. So.
Okay. I'm on my battery right now, but I'd have to go get my other thing. But yeah, I can go over a little bit as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should try to stick to it because I know we all have busy lives, but I'm flexible if we need to go over a little bit. Yeah.
I can go over 15 minutes or so.
Okay,
Cool.
good.
And then guys, I apologize. I haven't gone through the bylaws in detail. I didn't see that was on here, but I will definitely do that this week.
They still need some edits from. Sean King and I had an interchange back and forth. Did you get my second email, by the way, Sean?
I did.
Okay.
I'll plan to work on that this weekend.
Great. So, Luke, you're welcome to review it now, but it'd probably be more effective if you review it after his edits.
Sounds good.
I guess, but one of the things that, and let me pull up that email real quick, because there's a couple things I wanted to talk about as a group, I think. Do you have that email in front of you by any chance, John?
Yes, I can pull it up on my phone here.
Okay. I can pull it up. It'll just take 2, but it'll just take a minute. But I know there were a couple things I mentioned that I thought we should discuss as a group. One of them, my thinking's actually changed on, which is the position of executive director. So Sean pointed out that currently in the officer positions listed in the bylaws, executive director is not listed there. Now, it was listed there in the bylaws that we copied from the Bitcoin Foundation before we changed them. I took it out because I thought it made more sense to have the executive director be a personnel position rather than a board member. But then when looking at our capacity where we are right now, I realized that it may be some time before we can actually afford to hire a full-time executive director. And until that point, it makes perfect sense that we still need someone to act as director, and it makes sense to me that that should be someone on the board. So as it is right now, executive director is not listed as an officer position in the bylaws. What are listed are chairman, vice chairman, secretary, and treasurer. And I wanted to, I guess, present that to the group of the board and say, okay, is that something that each of you think that we should include or should not? Or are there other officer positions we need to make sure we include? And it's also important to note that according to the bylaws, one board member can hold multiple officer positions. So even though right now there are still 4 of us, if we had 5 positions, we could still fill all of them.
I think it's important that executive director is going to be an officer, and I assume eventually the chief officer. I guess that's one point of clarity we need to clarify in the bylaws is who would be the chief officer of the organization. But if the executive director is going to be an officer and exercise that level of authority, and there are places in the bylaw where things are reserved specifically at the executive director's discretion, then I think we do need to list them in that section as an officer. I do like the idea of having an interim one that's just simply board appointed, and I hereby nominate John.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I because I'm not clear on what that entails, you know, that title, what that actually means as far as roles, responsibilities, authorities, and whatever, because like you said, it's not laid out. I don't have a strong opinion either way. I think that this is our 2nd meeting together, and so far we've been able to work well together. We haven't run into a whole bunch of conflicts, so that hasn't been challenged yet. But I don't know that one person having a title is necessarily critical at this stage, but I might be wrong. I mean again, because I'm just not sure what that title actually means.
Yeah, well, I do think that one of our immediate needs is to select who fills which officer position, whether or not executive director is on that list. Even if that's just chairman, vice chairman, secretary, and treasurer, I think we do need to give those titles, not to give any one of us any more power than the others, but specifically to clarify roles and responsibilities. Who leads what action? Who's kind of the go-to person for what among the board. And I mean, those are all interim positions for now, no matter who fills what position, because we're holding a full board election in January, God willing. So, but yeah, I would agree. We probably need to clarify a little bit what exactly executive director means. Interesting.
So, for example, if we're going to have chairman, does the executive director trump chairman, or are they peers, or vice versa?
I think that, and there's a few different models to do this. I mean, the nonprofit I work for right now, our chairman acts as the chief officer of the board, and our executive director was a staff member, had no say on the board, was welcome to come to some board meetings and testify sort of like as a staff member to say, okay, this is what's going on. But ultimately, the chairman was the chief officer, and the executive director had no voting rights. The Bitcoin Foundation has both a chairman and an executive director, and both are on the board, but the executive director and the chairman, I'm not actually sure who holds the final say, but I believe it's the chairman on most things, but the executive director handles most operating issues with the full handles most operating decisions with the full backing of the board, with the full authority of the board of directors. And that's one of the keys is having someone who has authority for certain levels of decision making, so that every single decision doesn't need to be presented to the full board of directors.
Gotcha.
My suggestion would be based on a corporate model that we have a chairman of the board, but the chairman of the board not be listed among the officers.
Okay.
And that the senior officer be the executive director. There are other places in the bylaws where the executive director is mentioned, seemingly as the senior executive or the senior officer. So I think we do need a chairman, and there usually is a chairman of the board, but that's a board role as opposed to an officer role, I think.
Okay. You have more experience with that than I think any of us in the business sector.
You'll sometimes occasionally see the chairman of the board be an officer of the company, but normally the chairman of the board is almost an honorary sort of role. They chair the board meetings and Robert's Rule of Order and all that sort of stuff, but they're not an officer of the company. They're not empowered as an officer to usually sign for the company and transact business on behalf of the company with the public. The president, or in most charities, the executive director is the senior officer usually.
Okay, John and Luke, what are your thoughts? And real quick though, I do want to clarify. I do want to disassociate this decision from specific personalities. Meaning, this isn't about me. I really think we want to talk about these positions in generality, and then once we made a decision there, we can next meeting or later talk about who fills those positions. But right now, just talking about how the positions would work.
Yeah, I'd need to review the bylaws more before I can understand the difference between an officer and a just a normal board, a board member, or those kind of things in our context. Because right now I'm just not really sure day to day what that would actually mean. Other than what you said, I think is good to say. If somebody wants to contact the organization for a specific need, those roles and responsibilities defined help them understand who they should contact. But I think that we're such a small organization at this point that the structures and hierarchies aren't as important as they're going to be. But I do think the setting them up now is important.
And the bylaws probably won't make this clear, so let me try to articulate the main difference for everybody's benefit. And if you read the bylaws in this context, it'll hopefully make sense. The primary difference between an officer and a board member, even the chairman of the board, is the board under the bylaws only acts collectively. The board acts as a group. Any action of the board is going to be by vote of the board where a quorum was present. So no individual member of the board has authority to do anything. By contrast, the officers who are appointed by the board are delegated. Each officer is delegated specific sets of authority by the board. And within the authority they're delegated, they are authorized to act on their own, reporting, of course, to the board, ultimately accountable to the board, but they're authorized to act on their own. So, for example, if you appoint the treasurer and you empower the person with the powers of the treasurer, that treasurer could go to the bank, they could show the board resolution where they were appointed treasurer, they could open up the bank account, they could hire the accountant, they could, act as the treasurer of the company without having to go back to the board and get approval for every single one of those actions. So the board only acts collectively. Individual officers act individually, subject to the oversight of the board within their particular spheres of authority.
Excellent.
That's a fantastic clarification. Thank you.
So based upon all those things that have all been said, I think that my personal opinion is that what we should be doing right now is between now and, say, the January, we can start building and defining those officer positions and growing into those officer positions. But at the very outset, what we need immediately, if not sooner, is the ability for our action teams to actually start getting work done, and the autonomy to make those things happen. We need a sales and marketing team working on this. We need a web and design team working on that. And those are things that, if we sit around waiting for 2 or 3 months or whatever time it is before we get, quote unquote official officers assigned and all that stuff done. We need to work on those things, yes, but we also need to empower the volunteers that are out here working on a daily basis to be able to do the things that need to be done for the greater good of the whole overall organization.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree, and similar to what Sean was saying about officers, action teams, or what's usually referred to as committees, can be given specific. They can be authorized by the board to make specific decisions or actions on their own, or they can be authorized to essentially come up with ideas and present them to the board on a per item approval basis. Depending upon what approach we take, and that may most likely that differs depending upon which action team we're talking about. Yeah, so I agree. I think we definitely need to take advantage of our action teams. We have a lot of people who are willing to put a lot of time into helping out this organization beyond just the 4 of us, and we want to take advantage of that. I don't think it'll take months to work through this officer thing, though. I think that's definitely something we could work out in the next week or 2 at the most.
Sure.
Cool.
But I guess, Sean, what's your plan of action, or what's your suggestion as far as what we do immediately to do what you ask of, engaging and supporting these action teams?
Just in the last 24 to 48 hours or so, I've been working on identifying basically team leaders for each of the action teams. That everybody has access to the Google Drive, the mind map of the action teams, the way that we have them laid out. I would just like to see, and I can work on it, and if everybody else can, kind of work on it collaboratively too. I would just like to see a formalization or some organization put forth for those teams. I have some ideas. I'm kind of looking for other ideas about how the organization of those teams can happen. But essentially, I think the overall way that it would work would be all the people who want to volunteer for that action team all report to the one action team leader, and then the action team leader can come back and report to the board.
I agree with that.
So
yeah, and I think
kind of like.
I was just going to say real quick, I think it's important too that until we're more clearly defining who we are as an organization, we should also be cautious of people representing our organization. So like you've got that person who's an action team leader and he's got his action team and they're out doing stuff in the name of the Tennessee Bitcoin Alliance. That could potentially be problematic, and even as it relates to the previous discussion, if they're interacting with another company that may turn out to be shady and they're like, yeah, Tennessee Bitcoin Alliance wants to work with you and partner with you, it's kind of like that would be a disappointing result.
Yeah. My thought is that we would have and maybe, I don't know who's best positioned to draft this. You guys know the action teams better than I do. But my thought is that we have a committee charter almost for each action team. That committee charter will specify, who the leader of the action team is. Will empower that leader to organize the team under him, and we'll make it clear, for example, that they're not authorized to act on behalf of the organization. They're not authorized to sign. They're not authorized to represent the organization in public appearances and that sort of thing. But there would be a formal committee charter that's adopted by this board for each of those action teams. It can be just a page. It doesn't have to be anything incredibly formal, but it would make clear what their area of responsibility is, who the leader is, provide some general guidance, make it clear they report to the board, and will prohibit them from doing certain things.
Yeah, this is exactly the kind of thing that I think is important, and that's why we need to work on these very issues, because these action teams, some of these topics that we're talking about needing to get done, 501c3 filing, web hosting, all these other things that we have on our list, these are all things that are already being worked on, but we need a formal organization, or at least a clear understanding of how those teams are working and operating. And also in connection to that, I think that it's important for us as board members to be as engaged in those action teams as possible. I know that personally I'm working with, I don't know, half a dozen of them myself, but I think that to have more of a each of us. I know there's only 4 of us on the board right now, but I think that to have more board members engaged in those action teams kind of alleviates any of the possible missteps, if you will. And even though we're clearing, we're separating out, we're saying yes, I may be a board member, but at the same time I may also be a team leader, or I may be working on a team underneath another team leader. Even though that position, even if it's the same person, they still report back to the board. And I don't even know if you maybe want to take if somebody is on a team, on an action team, and they're also a board member. Is there a potential? Is it possible? Do we want to remove that person's voting rights in a subject that comes up to the board? Take them out of it because they are on that action team. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
I don't think that represents, unless it's conflict of interest, which I don't think that is. It still relates to Tennessee Bitcoin Alliance. I guess this thing we could approach on a case-by-case basis, but I can't imagine a scenario when you would need to remove their voting rights.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my thought is, Sean, you're obviously plugged in with some of these action teams, and I don't even remember what all the different action teams are. But my thought is, Sean, why don't you take a stab for the one that you think's most urgent in typing up what I'll call a charter, but it doesn't need to be any sort of legal formal document, but just some basic guidelines for the committee about who the leader is, what its areas of responsibilities are, what it's not permitted to do, and then why don't we review that next week, bless it, edit it and/or bless it, or maybe we can even edit it in between now and then, so blessing it next week is a formality, and then we could use that as a specimen for additional action teams, just make tweaks and edits to it for all the other action teams and get that done in the next week or 10 days.
Okay, I will definitely work on that, but I know this is more of a personal thing. Just FYI, I will be taking off Saturday, Sunday, and Monday of this week, and I will be out of town for the Soberfest on the 26th, but short of those 2 weekends, I'm available all other times, and I'll be doing, attending every other event, but those will be the only 2 times in the foreseeable future that I won't be around or available for anything that's going on with the TBA or any of our meetup groups or anything else. So just FYI, that's my schedule.
Okay. And I know that getting the 501c3 status was kind of a top priority, and that makes sense to me. Was one of the action teams, John, a legal action team, or what?
Yeah, we have I think we called it Legal and Policy Action Team, and we kind of already put your name on that action team. I hope you don't mind. It's kind of your thing. And I'm happy to be part of that action team as well, since I already have developed relationships with a number of regulators, senators, and other foul creatures of the earth. And so I'm happy to contribute any way I can. We can work together on that. But I think, 501c3 does fall in line with something that action team would work on.
Okay, so you and I then, I'll work on it mainly over the weekend, but you and I, John, can really hopefully work on finalizing those bylaws, getting that done. At our last board meeting, some people, I don't remember who all it was, were delegated coming up with a specimen business plan, something very, 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 very simple just to satisfy the regulators. Business plan is probably not the right word. I forget what was.
Financial projections.
Yeah, so...
Yeah. And I did that. That's up. That exists.
Okay. All right, good.
Yeah, so, and then you have, and I sent you a link also to our just sort of sample articles of incorporation. They need to be edited, but according to Sean Roy's attorney, we just need to put basically our information in there, and the form articles should be fine.
Right.
But yeah, once we have that done, then then we can just ask essentially the board to approve the bylaws, and we're ready to file. And one thing to note, though, is that one of the things that it does ask for in those bylaws is who are the initial officers. So I think we actually do need to make the officer selection before we file, because that's something that needs to be part of that.
I recall, that I believe that is correct. So I'm just throwing this out there as a question. Is it possible that we could have the paperwork for the 501c3 done within the next 7 days? That way we could print it out, carry it in, and I can get the numbers registered so we can plug that into our website stuff, our domain apps and things.
I think we probably can. I mean, we'd have to have an impromptu board meeting early next week to approve the bylaws, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we would. Yeah, if we want to have it done before Wednesday, we'd have to do that. But either way, I think we can get it. I think first step, Sean, you and I will, Sean King, we'll touch bases about making sure everything's done and ready to go, and then we'll, depending upon when that is, because if it's not until Monday or Tuesday, then we'll just meet on Wednesday, approve the bylaws, have everyone review them beforehand, and then we can go ahead and file. But if we need to schedule an early meeting on Monday or Tuesday, I think most of us can probably make that work.
And Sean, just to answer your specific question about the Google Apps, is it like $5 a head per month or something like that?
Yeah, it's I think it's $5 a head per person.
I'm saying, if we need to buy a month for $25 or $50 or whatever, I think we as members can do that and probably get reimbursed if needed or whatever.
Yeah. Sorry, Sean, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think that. I was going to say I don't think that paying for it is really necessarily an issue. I was just suggesting that we've done so much, but time is running out on that. It's just kind of a motivation to make it. We're 7 days away from being a month old already in this whole entire thing, and I'm just looking for drive to go forward. It's not really a matter of money because it's $5, whatever, right?
Cool. No, that's great. That's great.
Yeah, it's more of a principle thing.
Excellent. I'm gonna probably have to take off here, guys. I got to eat some lunch and got some other things I got to do. But great meeting.
Yes. So.
Yeah, and I see no reason we can't keep this discussion going. I know there's a little bit more on the list as far as the financial needs and the status reports. We can do this via email or chat, no problem.
Yeah, I think as far as financial needs go, short answer is we'll cover it until we have money, I think, and we'll worry about that later.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
And as far as like the reporting of the statuses on things, I think that could be taken care of by the formalization or the organization of those action teams, because everybody's working on these things. So all we got to do is formalize that, and then by email we can submit the statuses to the board, and we'll know what's going on.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
All right. Cool.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys.
Adios. Ending broadcast. Right.
So now it's